Friend Joey, because he is the one to be... ma vi devo parlare in italiano, tanto per cominciare, perché ho pensato che questo può servire per diversificare un po' il nostro lavoro qui e soprattutto perché la nostra gentile Federica è italiana e quindi così un piccolo omaggio a Federica, all'Italia, alla presidenza italiana che comincerà fra pochi giorni, praticamente mancano pochi mesi. E siccome già si prepara la presidenza italiana, allora si comincia a presentare il programma, si comincia a parlare e proprio ieri sono stata a sentire una conferenza che hanno organizzato alcuni colleghi nell'ambito della presidenza italiana e era niente di meno che sull'istruzione. E mi sono detta, toh, guarda che coincidenza, perché l'argomento di cui poi vi parlerò in inglese, e anzi il discorso che vi leggerò in inglese, che tengo a segnalare non è un discorso che ho scritto io, parla proprio dell'istruzione, dell'educazione, della formazione, tre parole che in italiano hanno un significato molto ampio. Quindi si parla soprattutto di apprendimento degli adulti come lifelong learning. Pensate, così si dice adesso in italiano, apprendimento degli adulti. Ma siccome ho qui la collega Angela Mitchell che cerca di districarsi con i bottoni del suo microfono, anzi della sua cuffia immagino, tengo a segnalare subito che ho commesso già un primo sbaglio, ahimè, perché mentre aspettavamo là fuori ho parlato dell'istruzione e che proprio ieri ci avevano spiegato, finalmente ho imparato che cos'è la differenza tra istruzione formale, non formale e informale. E ho detto che l'istruzione formale è quella che viene impartita nei centri educativi, anche università, quindi comprende tutto l'arco della vita dell'educazione, dell'istruzione dell'obbligo, come si suol dire in italiano, e va oltre. Questa è quella formale. Poi si parla della non formale, e io mi sono sbagliata prima perché ho detto che la non formale è quella che danno che sono le persone che imparano, invece no, la non formale è l'istruzione che viene data dalle organizzazioni, dalle aziende, dalle ditte, perché sono interessate a un qualche loro scopo. Questa è l'istruzione non formale. Poi abbiamo un altro tipo, e quella è la non formal. In inglese siamo d'accordo, formal, non formal. Adesso invece vi parlo della informal, dell'istruzione informale. E l'istruzione informale, pensate voi, è proprio quella che stiamo facendo noi qua, perché, come diceva Federica, questa è un'iniziativa assolutamente privata, anche se siamo all'interno di un centro educativo perfettamente riconosciuto, pubblico o semipubblico, non so, qui in Belgio è un po' complessa la situazione dell'istruzione. Questo dunque è l'istruzione informale. Ma tornando a Bovo, chiaramente sono qua per parlarvi, per leggervi questo famoso discorso, e siccome Federica è una persona estremamente organizzata, ha voluto che io le fornissi qualche ragguaglio, giustamente vuole essere preparata, vuole essere organizzata. Si sente che è stata per un po' in Inghilterra, si è così imbevuta del carattere organizzativo dell'Inghilterra, faccio per ridere, ma e mi diceva appunto qual è il titolo di questo tuo discorso. Dico, il titolo è il seguente, è On the Move for Equality 2014 From Words to Action, che vuole essere un titolo un po' misterioso, ma ecco che ora allora passo all'inglese. Va bene fin qua? Sì? Non sono andata troppo... così non ho fatto i giretti, no? Intorno all'argomento, no. Bene, si riesce a seguire. So, this is a speech that I did not write myself. It is a speech by Miss Mary Hatwell Futrell, and she gave the speech at the closing of a conference, a very interesting conference, so interesting that I really thought it would be appropriate for me to read it to you today. Because the context was the following. It was the World Women's Conference of Education International, which I don't know if you're aware, but it is an international organization that was founded in 1992. We'll read about it later on. So it goes. Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for inviting me to your practice today, and actually to the Education International Women's Conference. We've come a long way since the days when issues regarding women and girls were rarely, if ever, put on the agenda, where the sole focus has been in this conference on women and girls. I remember back in the 1980s when I was on the board of the World Confederation of Organizations of the Teaching Profession, WCOTP, where part of the agenda was focused on women and girls. I remember the overwhelming majority of the delegates attending the WCOTP assembly were men. A few women attended the assembly, but rarely if ever spoke during any of the sessions. During my second annual meeting with a colleague of mine, Sheena Handley from Canada, we, and along with a few other women, decided to organize a caucus to focus on issues related to women and girls and to encourage more female participation in the deliberations. When the male delegates discovered that we had organized the Women's Caucus, some of them came to our meeting and tried to take over. Others threatened the women delegates and told them that if they attended the caucus meetings or spoke out during the assembly, they would be banned from attending future assemblies, as well as national conferences back home. Many of the women delegates were intimidated by these actions, so we decided that men could not attend the caucus meetings, that the meetings needed to be a place where women felt comfortable speaking out and voicing their opinions. The strategy worked. Over the next few years, the caucus grew. Women became more active in the deliberations, and, equally important, members of the Assembly began to adopt policies to address the concerns of women and girls, especially related to education. Perché ecco, dell'istruzione che volevo appunto parlare, quindi siamo in pieno argomento. As women grew more confident in their roles as leaders and advocates, we eventually began to open the caucus and other meetings to men, initially allowing them to attend as observers, gradually allowing them to participate in the deliberations, because we knew that we needed their support, and if we were to achieve the goal of gender equality and equity, as well as equal rights in the trade union movement and in education in general. Well, those actions also influenced the negotiations when we merged to form Education International in 1992. One of the outcomes of those merger deliberations was to make sure women were well represented on the EI board, executive committee, as well as among its staff, including creating an associate director general position to focus on issues related to women and girls. We wanted to make sure our concerns were not simply expressed in words, but fulfilled by action. EI also created the status of Women's Committee, and the Women's Caucus continued to function. which today consists of hundreds of women from all over the world. Furthermore, when one looks at the leadership of EI, Education International, the fact that two of its three presidents have been women speaks to the organization's commitment to equity. Today, EI's governance and staffing structures are models of equity and equality for other unions and/or professional organizations to emulate. Internally and externally, Education International has also been a leader for all children, including girls, to have the right to be educated. We should be proud of the fact that EI has persistently partnered with UNESCO over the last 2 decades to help achieve the Education for All EFA goal. UNESCO held its World Conference on Education for All in Jomtien, Thailand in 1990, where representatives from 155 countries and more than 150 organizations adopted EFA and its 6 goals, including one on gender equality. As you well know, EFA was adopted to universalize education in order to ensure that the basic learning needs of all people in every nation were met. It was designed to ensure that everyone would not only have the right, but indeed the opportunity to be educated. So, Education for All was originally to be achieved by 2015. Unfortunately, 2014 is here and that goal will not be achieved by the deadline set. Analysis of data in the last few years show that the momentum had slowed. However, recently EFA got a turbo boost and is now called the Global Education First Initiative. Mind you, colleagues, this is another acronym that you will probably hear, GEFI. GEFI will rejuvenate the movement and set the stage for post-2015 achievement of EFA goal. The good news is that UNESCO and its allies have refused to abandon the EFA goal and will continue to move forward with efforts to guarantee every child's right to learn, to be educated. EFA is still here, and with your continued commitment, we can achieve it. We cannot afford to stop now. Today, 750 million people in the world are considered to be illiterate, and of that number, over 100 million people worldwide, mostly women and girls, still do not have access to education. When I see those statistics and think about children today not having access to schooling, I often ask myself, why not? Why, especially in the 21st century, are communities still denying people, particularly women and girls, the simple, basic right to go to school and to be educated? Why are there countries today where women and girls are beaten, raped, even killed, simply because they wanted to be educated? In some instances, it is because of abject poverty, the lack of resources to build schools. But in too many cases, I think the basic truth is that women and girls are denied the right to be educated because it is easier to oppress people who are illiterate, who are uneducated. I think it is because when people are educated, they are more empowered to stand up for their rights, to be free and to dare to dream and to try and make them come true. When I was a child growing up in a poor neighborhood in Virginia, one of the southern states in the United States, I remember my family insisting that we earn a good education. I remember my mother encouraging and inspiring me to value education, to learn. I remember her telling me that people can take away your house, your car, your material belongings, but they can never take away your education. I assure you that I would not be standing here today had it been not for the teachers, my family, and the community that assured me the basic right of being able to go to school, to be educated. Whether living in a developed or developing country, education can transform one's life. It can enable you to remove barriers such as poverty, illiteracy, and discrimination. It can free you to develop potential you never dreamed that you had, enable you to have a better quality of life. For instance, a recent study by UNESCO, Women's Education and Women's Political Participation, states that in countries where people are denied the opportunity to be educated, they are far less likely to participate in the political process. However, the study shows that educating women, even at the most basic level, has the potential to raise women's participation in democracy, both as voters and legislators. In addition, education improves the representation of women's interests in policy making. Raising the share of women in government tends to improve, for instance, education, health, prevent crime, especially against women, and the list goes on and on. But it all starts with making sure that in every nation state, whether rural, urban, or suburban, whether rich or poor, that every child has access to education. And the most influential, the most powerful factor in assuring that all children, regardless of gender or sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, religious belief, race or ethnicity, have access to quality education is to guarantee that each child is taught by a qualified teacher. It means making sure those children attend schools where they have a well-defined curriculum and the necessary resources to learn. It means that every girl, as well as every boy's right to be educated, is honored. And this is where I will stop for now, because I fear that otherwise I'll be over time. Thank you very much.